Controlling expenses without killing culture. So, controlling expenses while maintaining a positive culture is key to a long term success. Now, in this panel, Jill from Barton Malow, Christel Davis from Freightliner, and James Camilleri from Fyorin will share practical strategies for balancing cost management with a strong organization culture. Attendees will learn how to manage expenses without compromising employee engagement, fostering accountability, and aligning financial goals with the team's well-being. Don't go anywhere, as I'm going to now give you a little insight as to who our panelists are. James Camilleri, he's the CEO of Fyorin. I hope I'm saying that right. We're going to find out in just a moment. James is a seasoned entrepreneur and business leader with over a decade of experience in scaling technology companies across Europe, Asia, USA, and even the Middle East. He's also the co-founder and CEO, as I mentioned, Fyorin. Jill, she is a senior manager, treasury and shared services with Barton Malow. Jill has had the pleasure of serving in corporate finance for more than 20 years. Her areas of expertise include policy development and compliance, internal controls, process improvements, employee development, procure to pay, cash management, travel, expense reporting, and corporate cards. There's a lot going on there with Jill. Christel Davis, head of shared services with Freightliner Group. 12 years of leadership with a finance shared services environment, specializing in leadership, culture, and process change, building a sustainable framework strategy to create a high-performing team and operate the successful running of a shared service center. We're going to get to our running order. I'm just going to pull that up right now. And let's meet our panel. Christel, how are you today?
Yeah, all good, Rob. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Tell us a little about yourself, Christel. I know I just gave you a quick little bio, but we'd love to hear it straight from you.
Yeah, so I'm obviously Christel Davis. I work for the Freightliner Group. I'm the head of shared services there, so I look after accounts payable, billing, credit control, treasury, and a customer experience team as well. And one of my big challenges is around expenses and managing expenses across the group.
Well, thank you. And Jill, now I know we've met before. We're like on a first name basis nowadays. How are you?
Good, Rob. How are you?
It's great to see you again. Since I know you already, why don't you tell our attendees a little about yourself?
Prior to my current position, I worked in the automotive industry for my entire career, which is a very interesting dynamic, if any of the people on the call are familiar. I now work for a construction management firm, very different culture, but still have to enforce compliance. So a bit of a lighter touch where I am now, and learning how to keep us one of the best and brightest in the Detroit area, as we've made for the past 8 years.
Fantastic. I love it. And James, first time meeting you today, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Hope you're doing well also, Rob.
Thank you. I am. Did I say that right? Fyorin?
Hey, yes, it was right. Yes, it's right. It's pronounced Fiorin. Yeah.
Oh, see, you got that little roll. Tell us a little about you, James.
Yes. So I'm James. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Fiorin. Fiorin is a financial operations and the treasury management system. We help businesses so that from one dashboard they can have 306 degrees overview of their cash position across different entities, different countries, but also from the same platform they can automate their payables, receivables, and also expense management. I am based in Malta. So for those who doesn't know, Malta is in the center of the Mediterranean. So here it's really hot and sunny. So yeah,
I was just going to say, it's got to be hot there.
yes, it is.
All right, well, let's get to it. Here's the deal. Expenses are a hot topic. Now, I'm going to give you an example. In May of this year, the Times reported that 2 French MPs had been suspended for inappropriate expenses. Here's what they did. One of them for spending 25,000 euros on drugs in one case, and the other for buying a monthly $39.99 euro subscription to a dating site for over 50s to pay for her mother's funeral and to pay kennel expenses for her dogs, Smoothie and Chucho, her Labrador and her poodle. It's the first time that French MPs have been suspended for ethical failings, and it was in the Times. So today we're going to talk about expenses, our experience around policies, the most outrageous claims we've seen, and how to manage them well. It's important to make it easy for colleagues to claim legitimate expenses and to pay expense properly. So how do you balance this with guarding against fraud? So we're going to have a poll now, guys, and then we're going to have our panelists chime in once we see the results. So I'm going to ask you this first question. Does your organization, now again, this is to all of our attendees, I encourage you to chime in because it helps with our conversation. Does your organization have a watertight expenses policy? Yes, no, somewhat. So as we wait for the answer here, Christel, did you hear about these two MPs?
Yes. I think I'd like the dating site, but I don't think Freightliner would actually pay that for me. But yeah, I just think it's so I think with expense policies, they're watertight until somebody abuses them further. But yeah, it's pretty shocking that they were claiming such things on their expenses, really.
Yeah, because I know we've discussed this with other companies at our different live conferences, and fraud's a big deal. And I've always said, and again, I'm not involved in this business, but I did have a nightclub, and I was watching some of my employees come in with brand new cars, and I knew they didn't have a second job, and I know they were just working for me. And I was like, how is this happening? And, after digging a little bit, we knew that they were stealing. So watch for new cars. All right. So does your organization have a watertight expenses policy? 23% of you said yes, 14% of you said no, and a huge 64% said somewhat. Let's start off with you, Christel. What do you think about those numbers?
That's surprising. Like I said, I think we all think that our processes are fine until somebody abuses them. But I do think expenses is quite difficult to manage from a business point of view. So in Freightliner, we've got our own expenses management system, but it doesn't talk to my ERP, and it doesn't talk to the purchasing card system that we've got as well. So it's really difficult to know whether people are abusing without doing a full audit once a year, which we're embarking on now, on checking to make sure that an invoice hasn't been paid on their P card, put through AP from an ERP point of view, and also paid on their expenses. So for us, it's really difficult to manage as a company. So I would have put myself in the somewhat category. We do have a policy, but it's quite difficult to manage with the different systems that we have.
Now, imagine doing an audit is time consuming, but in the end, it'll save you money and find out where these problems are coming from.
Yeah, we've got an external company that we use. They do sort of like an accounts payable audit for me anyway, once a year, just in case anything's been duplicated or manually paid and paid through the system. So I've had a conversation with them over the last couple of weeks around how can they incorporate the T&E side of it. Our T&E system is really good, and it will self-audit, but my concern is that people within the business, and I hope they wouldn't be doing it, but you never know, will be claiming those different purchases, if you like, in different ways and different methods, and it's really difficult to track. So on this particular company, it's only on a no win, no fee basis. So we've got covered there. So actually, if nobody's abused it, we're fine. But also they come back and recommend the different processes that we can change, really, just to stop any fraud within the company.
Wonderful. Now, Jill, we're looking at 14% saying no, we have no policy.
Yeah, that's surprising. I guess if you were small enough, you wouldn't maybe have to worry so much about it. But here in the U.S., we are really trying to make sure that the expenses are compliant to the IRS definition of business expenses. So we felt that it was very important to define what is um, a not reimbursable expense. Things like kennel fees, right? Dating apps, drugs, right? Should be on that list. But other things to help people, to guide them for things that they might think could be reimbursable, but are actually considered to be a taxable reimbursement by the IRS. I would say the one thing about our policy that isn't quote unquote watertight is we do use the IRS language around hotels, saying that accommodations shouldn't be lavish. Which is unfortunately sort of a gray word because what's lavish for one person may not be for someone else. But we haven't seen great abuse in that area.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like you would think a 4 star would probably be someplace that fits comfortable in terms of expense, not 5 star. You're not going to the Shangri-La here, you know. So it's pretty amazing. And is there like how do you introduce that policy?
Um, so it was already in place when I came on board, but it was a like a 30-page document. So who's going to read it, right? It's just way too complicated. So I began just boiling it down to what is actual policy and then what is process. Those are not the same thing, to kind of help people around these spending ideas. And then it was very easy for me to roll it out and then to roll out the updates annually, letting people know what might have changed from the prior year, making that policy available on every page that has to touch expenses so that people can quickly and easily look at it and see if this expense is permitted or not.
Now, James, there's got to be some tech tools to help people out.
Definitely, right? I think the most important thing is also that Jill mentioned now is policies that are 30 pages long, right? Of course, no one's going to read those policies, right? And the there's where the technology comes in. This is where you can use technology to actually implement those 30-page policies, right? And some technologies that are around is, for example, limiting employees where they can spend with their cards, right? So, for example, you can say like you can only spend on these type of merchants, for example, uh, or even setting up different budgets, for example, or creating also claims related to specific trips. So these are all things that, with the help of technology, with the help of having a flexible expense management solution, it can help you to implement these policies into a product essentially, where the employees they will be abiding with these policies without having to know inside out what are these policies essentially, because automatically they will be restricted. But then, even from a finance perspective, it makes things much more easier when it comes into reconciliation, reimbursements, so on and so forth.
Were you surprised by the numbers, James?
Actually, not that much, because we come across a lot of businesses where you see that maybe they have a couple of credit cards running around to buy stuff, even though they are a big company. So we see a lot of different things. So to be honest with you, not that much.
Well, that leads me into our next poll question. Perfect segue, my friend. Does your organization expect claimants to spend their own money and claim it back, or do you provide a card which the company pays? So we're going to ask you, claimants spend their own money and claim back, or is it a company card is provided and paid by the company, or third, a virtual card is provided and paid by the company? So if you kids chime into that right now, my attendees, that would be greatly appreciated. Now, I'm going to start off again with you, Christel. What's your opinion on, company cards or virtual cards as opposed to claimants spending their own money and then claiming it back? Because that seems a little more arduous.
Yeah, we've got interestingly, we've got a mixture of both within our company. So depending on level of colleague, they've got a P card or a company card, and then other team members would then claim back through the T&E expenses and paid weekly on that. I think there is benefits for the company card because obviously we get terms on top of that. But the challenge that we have then is people submitting the receipts so we can claim back the VAT in the UK, where I think when it's their own money, they have to submit the receipts and actually then they get their payments. So for me, there's pros and cons for both. But we find the challenge within our company is they'll pay on their card, but they won't necessarily submit their expenses within a timely manner. But the ones that are claiming without a card will always submit their expenses. If not, they're not going to get paid because the system will throw that out. So I think I'm a bit of a mixed view, to be honest, depending on the value of the purchase as well. To ask a team member to purchase, £200-300 kit for whatever it be, to take it out of their own money is a little bit unfair when it's a business expense. So for me, I'm a bit mixed between the two. I don't normally sit on the fence, but I think sometimes the P cards are really helpful to people within the business that are spending a lot of money. So yeah,
Yeah,
bit
it's
mixed.
funny you say that because I'm looking at the poll, and when it comes to spending their own money or claiming it back, spending their own money and claiming it back is at 48%. Company card is provided and paid by the company 40%, and then the virtual is only at 12%. So it looks like, as you mentioned, having the company card or spending your own money and then claiming it back are the top two. Do you find that there's always the excuse of a lost receipt, or I can't find this, or I didn't know I couldn't claim this? Does that happen quite often?
Yeah, I think with lost receipts, if it's through the P card, we can actually get a copy of that receipt anyway. So there isn't no excuse with that really. But I think with people with the T&E, the main one I think they struggle to keep the receipt on is when they're claiming back mileage, company mileage. So if they've used their own vehicle, claim back company mileage, the expectation is they would put a petrol receipt on there, and not many people know to keep their petrol receipts. So, but I think a lot of people, we try and support our colleagues to educate them on what we need and actually the benefit of us actually having the receipt to be able to claim back the VAT. So yeah, I think our colleagues are pretty good. But you always get the odd one or two, and we've been really strict with the company cards that if they're not putting the receipts on, they've got X amount of time to do it, and then we take their card off them because at the end of the day, it's a company property. They can't abuse that, so there needs to be a consequence sometimes of people not submitting on time or in a timely manner, I would say.
Yeah, because then it just prolongs everything. The chain breaks.
Yeah.
Jill, 12% are only using virtual cards. Doesn't a virtual card make jobs easier and free up employee finances?
Not necessarily. When we're talking about travel, keep in mind that hotels are very resistant to a virtual card. They want a physical plastic when that employee checks in. We're finding a very similar thing with car rentals. Airline, no trouble. We were able to book that with no issue. But as far as the employee on the road, virtual cards are still not accepted enough that we can feel comfortable that they'll be covered.
Interesting. And what do you think of these numbers? Like they looks like, spending their own money and having a company card are pretty close. That seems to be the norm with most companies.
So our company, the way that we look at it, number one is in construction, a lot of our employees are not extremely well off. So if we're asking them to do something on our behalf, we really want to give them the tools to be able to do it without them having any sort of a hit to their credit or worrying about if they're going to be able to cover it. Also, having the spend on the corporate card allows us to have visibility into what is being spent a little better and faster than if people were spending on their own cards and then submitting it. Sometimes at companies, I've seen people like hold all their expenses until December because they want a big check for Christmas, sort of a thing. And we really need to get our expenses submitted within 60 days. So the corporate card helps with that. And then lastly, we have an agreement with our card provider where we get a substantial rebate. And we were able to recall over $1 million, I think it was last year, in rebate payments between the corporate issued cards and then also paying vendors with virtual cards.
James, we're getting some interesting comments in our chat box. Some of them are, we just got our first virtual card. Another one, I cancel all credit cards and place purchase orders processes in place so it would stop people spending willy-nilly. We've got another one that says not every company accepts a PO as a form of payment. We have a credit card, a central credit card will solve a lot of unnecessary issues. What do you think about some of those questions and concerns and comments?
Yes, I mean, definitely. I think that it's also a bit of a mix. I mean, we've seen that in most cases, claimants who actually spend their own money and then they have to claim it back. I think that is also good, even from a finance perspective, because essentially it will avoid a lot of work. But my comment would be specifically around virtual cards. I think virtual cards are a way of how you can control also the expenses. It's true, and I agree with Jill that there are hotels, even for rental cars, that virtual cards are not accepted. However, today with the technology, you can still have one plastic card, and linked to it, you can have multiple virtual cards. So in reality, when you are tapping or when you are paying with a physical card. Now you might say, what is the advantage of that? The advantage is that, and I give you a very simple example, is that let's say you have an IT person. IT typically they have a number of subscriptions. You don't want to have one card linked to the same one card for different subscriptions. You might want to have different virtual cards or a virtual card for each subscription so you can control it. So if let's say something will get compromised, you only limit it to the specific thing. But then let's say the IT person also is traveling. Then you can have another card linked to that particular trip, for example, where it can have different budgets, can be automatically topped up on a daily basis, depending on the budget, different controls. So it gives you all that level of flexibility. And all this can be linked to a physical card, essentially, where, again, you have the advantage of having more control to the virtual card, but at the same time also the convenience of having a physical card where you can pay everywhere.
Interesting. Thank you for answering that. All right, let's move on to our next poll. The question is, how do you ensure good governance around expenses? There's three choices. You have an automated solution, or you retrospectively audit expenses, or something else. And if you have something else, can you please say what that something else is in our comments? So I'm going to start again with you, Christel. What's your opinion on governance around expenses?
So our system does it for us, actually. So we've got our our expenses policy, and there's certain things that the system will check for us. First of all, make sure that we've got receipts, making sure that the receipts are clear, making sure that the VAT's been populated when it's VATable, where we can do like a VAT return on it. So the system will do a lot of it for us, but then it does spit out audit requirements. So if for example I process my expenses, I didn't put a receipt on, that would then come into my team to actually say, almost go and coach the person that has submitted the expenses. So the system does the majority of it for us, but there is some manual intervention, but we use that from a root cause point of view to educate the business, but also do we then need to update our T&E policy to reflect where people aren't adhering to what we're expecting. So for me, I think our governance is pretty good. The only time that we get any pushback is if we've pushed back on somebody's claim and said, actually, that's not a viable claim. You've spent too much money on a lunch or whatever it be. We have the opportunity then to go to a senior leader. They're the ones that normally go, yeah, right, and we'll pay. But actually, it's just educating those senior leaders as well that we are spending the company's money. So, we will push back on those senior leaders and say, really, we shouldn't be paying that expense. But ultimately it's their P&L and they have the ultimate decision. But where possible, we would flag any concerns within the business around abusing the expenses, really. But the system does it all for us, really. We probably get about 5 out of the 50 claims that we get a week that spit out from an audit point of view where we need to challenge back. So yeah,
that sounds like pretty good numbers.
Yeah, and I think it is down to the education, really. When we launched the T&E policy 2 years ago, it wasn't in that situation. I think everybody's got spat out from an audit point of view. But we've really spent some time educating the business, but also when a new starter starts, we also go through the process with them as well to make sure that they understand what they can claim, how they can claim it, how to use the system. So I think we've done a lot of work on education of the people, which obviously makes the process a lot more smoother than probably what it was 2 years ago.
I'm going to circle back to you after we finish with Jill and James, just because I have a question from one of our attendees from our last segment, but I'll come back to you, Christel.
Okay.
Jill, our poll looks like this. We have an automated solution. 50% of our attendees use that. We audit expenses retrospectively, 38%, and something else is only at 12%. What's your thoughts on those numbers?
Well, I mean, those are two different ways to handle it. We actually do both have automated software that helps us before we move to the payment stage. And then we do a retrospective audit for things like spouse as an attendee, because that's a taxable reimbursement, country club memberships, things that need to be potentially added to the employee's earnings for the year and taxed.
Oh, that sounds like a good solution. And that works well for what you guys do.
It works well for us. Another thing that we found that was very helpful was in our expense policy, we initiated if there was any spending that was outside of the policy, that it would require approval from the manager's manager. So a skip level approval. And that seems to have really cut down on people just, they want to do the right thing for their employee, and they're like, oh, we understand it's a hardship. Go ahead and put this month's rent on the credit card. And then it comes to me, looking at it saying that's not a reimbursable expense. Making that manager's manager have to okay it gets that conversation happening about what is allowed and what's not allowed. And we've seen greater compliance since we've made that change.
Well, a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, exactly.
James, what's your thoughts on those numbers? 50% automated, 38% audit expenses retrospectively.
Yes, I think this very much reflects also what we see from when we speak with a number of customers, that if you have a number of expenses, if you want to have good governance, you need to actually have some automated system. Otherwise, you're gonna have a lot of manual work that needs to be done. Of course, the automated system, you also need to audit it, so that complements it. So this is very, very much in line with also what we see across different companies, across different jurisdictions.
So I just want to jump back. We were talking a little earlier about company credit cards, virtual cards, and I just want to go back to some of the comments that we received, just because I think it's important to do so. Heather wrote in and said, Central credit card or a P card program is great for some internal purchases from the procurement side, and having a business travel account for all airfare bookings for business travel works well. For other miscellaneous travel expenses, hotel, meals, we find that having employees pay for their own expenses and submitting expenses works well. What do you think about that, James? It kind of tells it like a lot of businesses would be doing, or is that something you would
Exactly.
kind of?
It's also about control, right? So if someone, I think we mentioned this earlier, if I go out for a meal and I spend over my budget, right? Um, I, I can't be reimbursed in that case. So again, that's also controlling a bit what can be done to a certain extent. Having said this, there are also ways of how you can actually create company cards where you can also limit such things from happening, which means that if you limit it from a company card perspective, that means that even from then the payable side of things, there's also less work to be done for the finance teams.
Christel, I'm going to throw this comment and question over to you. You mentioned taking company cards off people that fail to submit receipts. Can you share how long they have to submit? Were they repeat offenders and was someone else given a credit card to replace theirs?
So what we do is our process is they've got 3 months to submit them without us chasing them, which I think is more than enough time. And then we start chasing at that point. So they have then another further 3 months if they haven't done that at that point, if they haven't submitted their P card expenses at that point, then I will write with a recommendation to that FD and the manager MD of that particular part of the business to recommend that the P card is then removed. But so at that point that we probably would remove it because they would see that they've not done what we've asked them to do for several months. But part of the second part of that question was around, do you give it to somebody else? It depends on sites. So we've got sites with one person with a credit card. Yes, we would give that to somebody else that would then hopefully submit the expenses. But if it was just like, for example, myself, and I didn't submit my P card expenses, that point then I would have to go through the T&E process.
Jill, I don't know if this affects you or maybe it does with James or you've seen this. Payments in multiple currencies. You're out there and you're getting all these receipts and euros, Canadian, US. How do you handle that?
Well, we have just a little bit of business that is international. The ones that are in Korean, that's a challenge for sure. Thankfully, the expense management tool that we have does a good job of converting to US dollars. Also, I've had to use Google Translate to understand what that thing was that was purchased. So that is definitely more of a manual look, but thankfully it's only maybe 10% of our business.
James, what about abuse situations? Do you block the cards? Is there a warning? Do you reprimand them? What if somebody, you've caught them doing something that doesn't comply?
Yes, I mean, from our side, in terms of our system, if these things happen, they get notified and the card will be blocked automatically. Right, so these are things that are set automatically. The cards also will also be blocked for certain industries. For example, you can't go and gamble, for example, with the card or do certain things. So typically, yes, I mean the cards will be blocked automatically because there's also a risk. There's a risk also on the financial provider. This is also offering the service because ultimately the risk is being carried by the financial provider.
All right. I always ask questions like this next one because sometimes it's shocking. We talked about those two MPs. So I'm going to ask each one of you. So I'll go with you first. Give me an example of an outrageous claim and how you handled it. If you have one, I'm hoping you do.
From my side? Oh, sorry.
Christel.
Oh, okay, that's right. You broke up when you said the person's name. So, No, we don't have people abuse it, to be fair. The only feedback that I've given from a governance point of view is we have a lot of golf days, a lot of golf days. So it's then, are we getting the return on investment for those golf days? So yeah, that's the only thing that I've really flagged from a we spend a lot of money on golf days, so it's really, are we getting that return? But the small amount where people are maybe claiming a little bit more than what's in the policy, that's just education, and we've educated people on that. So yeah, we don't have a lot, in all fairness, but it'd be really interesting once I've done this audit. And this is my biggest risk and concern, because we've got the different systems. Well, we've got four in total. We've got the ERP, the Concur, which is our travel system, so I can book my hotel, my train through that, but we still get T&E expenses for train and hotels, and we get a better deal. So are we missing out on better deals with that particular provider? And also we've got the P card as well. It'd be really interesting to see, after I've done my audit, or the external company's done the audit, whether what risk was actually there, and has there been further abuse that we could not see, and what processes can we then put in place to mitigate that risk, really.
Jill, do you have any examples for us?
I have so many examples. So a couple of fun ones. A man he was in business development. He had a special set of skills, like a golden boy that would never do anything, he couldn't do anything wrong. I was asked to pull his expense report. He was saying he was dining alone, but as you know, receipts can say how many people are at the table. So we knew that he wasn't, and it turned out he was traveling with his mistress. And we paid for that whole vacation, apparently, for the two of them. Another time, another person in business development had a receipt, and something about the name of the company just didn't ring especially great with me. So I Googled them, and then someone walked up to my desk, and I was talking with them. And when I turned around, my screen was full of strippers. I was so embarrassed, So yeah, those are a couple of fun ones we've had.
I love it. I'm just wondering if there was some repercussions with the guy traveling with his mistress, maybe divorced now.
I think so, and fired. So that's how that went. So
in that order. James, how about yourself?
Well, I mean, typically what we see are, I mean, like from the general data, also data coming in from our support, right? Is that people saying, like, I'm trying to use this card on a dating site, for example, or any other similar sites, and it's not working. Why it's not working? And so they come to our support team saying why it's not working. And of course, this and this is becoming more and more common, unfortunately. So these are the things that we see. But again, it's not working. It also means that controls are essentially in place and right, because otherwise the transaction will go through if these things are not in place.
Yeah, I think, a key lesson from this is never stop auditing. Would that be a statement?
Right. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you each one last question. Give me your top tip for managing expenses. I'll start with you, Christel.
I would say educating the business of what is expected and what the policy means. And probably going back to Jill's point, don't make your document like a 12-page essay, because nobody reads it. People are too busy. So for me, short and sweet policy and educate, I would say, would be my two top tips.
And Jill, if this is similar to what you're going to say, just expand on it. But what do you think your top tip for managing expenses is?
I guess my top tip you kind of already covered. Never stop auditing. Good people in bad circumstances can make poor choices. So don't give them the opportunity. Never stop looking. Keep those controls tight.
And how about you, James? Top tip for managing expenses?
My top tip is invest in a good technology system that is flexible enough, but also gives you the right controls to implement your policies with ease, because that will save you a lot of time.
Well, let's get your final thoughts, guys. Over to you, Christel.
Yeah, I think for me, like I said, it's for me from an expense point of view, it is challenging with all the systems that we've got. So yeah, if I did this call in a couple of months' time, it'd be really interesting to see what that external auditor finds for me, if anything.
And Jill?
Final thoughts. I definitely agree with James that software has to be the thing to help you. No person can look at every single receipt and make a value judgment. So we use AI to help us.
And James, over to you.
Yes, my final thought is that we've seen a lot of companies, even though in this day and age, that expense is still a problem. And that's why, going back to what I mentioned earlier, that having a good piece of software makes a lot of difference.
Well, guys, I really appreciate your time. It was informative and a bit of fun. I love the stories, but I guess, audit is on top of minds. Technology, top of minds, and keep things short and sweet seems to be the way to go. Where can people find you, Christel? Where can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to link in with me, more than happy for people to do so. If anybody's got any other questions, shared service related or expenses related. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn if anybody wants to link in.
And James, how about yourself?
I'm also on LinkedIn, or else you can drop me an email at james@fyorin.com if you're looking to implement any expense management solutions that gives you the flexibility and control that you need.
And finally, over to you, Jill.
So I am on LinkedIn as well. I'd love to hear from you. I will also be at GBTA next week, Global Business Traveler Association. So if anyone is going there to Denver, hopefully I'll see you there.
Thanks again, guys. Much appreciated. It was wonderful meeting you. Good seeing you again, Jill. And we look forward to having you on our panel again. And great insight on a difficult kind of subject, because it's people's livelihoods that may have to be changed.